Imagine living 100,000 years ago. There are no hospitals, no doctors, no clean delivery rooms, no painkillers, no emergency surgeries. Only a small fire flickering inside a cave, the distant growls of predators echoing through the night, and a woman about to give birth. For ancient humans, this wasn't simply the beginning of a new life. It was one of the most dangerous moments either mother or baby would ever face. A difficult labor could last for hours or even days. There was no way to stop severe bleeding, no antibiotics to fight infection, and no surgeon waiting to perform an emergency operation. If something went wrong, survival depended entirely on the people around you and on luck. Yet despite these incredible risks, generation after generation survived. Every single person alive today exists because countless mothers successfully gave birth under conditions that seem almost unimaginable. But here's the mystery. If human childbirth has always been so dangerous, why did evolution allow it to become this way? To answer that question, we have to travel back millions of years, long before modern humans, cities, or even stone tools existed. Our story begins in Africa. Around 7 million years ago, the ancestors of humans began doing something extraordinary. Instead of moving primarily on 4 limbs, like chimpanzees and gorillas, they slowly adapted to walking upright. This single evolutionary change transformed everything. Walking on 2 legs freed the hands, allowing early humans to carry food, make tools, care for children, and eventually explore vast new landscapes. It also made long-distance travel across the African savanna far more energy efficient. It was one of the greatest advantages our ancestors ever gained. But evolution never gives a gift without asking for something in return. As our ancestors became fully bipedal, their skeletons changed dramatically. One of the most important transformations occurred in the pelvis. The pelvis became shorter, stronger, and shaped like a bowl, providing better support for the body's weight while standing and walking. It was a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. But hidden inside this improvement was a problem that would affect every future human birth. The birth canal became narrower and far more complex. For millions of years, this wasn't a serious issue. Early human ancestors, including Australopithecus afarensis, best known from the famous fossil nicknamed Lucy, gave birth to babies with relatively small brains. Their newborns could likely pass through the birth canal with much less difficulty than modern human babies. Then, evolution changed the rules once again. Around 2 million years ago, the first members of the genus Homo began appearing. Their bodies looked increasingly human. Their tools became more sophisticated, and most importantly, their brains began growing larger. That remarkable increase in intelligence helped our ancestors solve problems, cooperate in groups, and eventually spread across much of the world. But larger brains created an entirely new challenge. They produced babies with much larger heads. And suddenly, evolution faced an impossible balancing act. How could a mother give birth to an increasingly large-brained baby through a pelvis designed for efficient walking? The answer would reshape not only childbirth, but the future of the human species itself. For decades, scientists believed they had the answer. They called it the obstetric dilemma. The idea was straightforward. As humans evolved to walk upright, natural selection reshaped the pelvis for efficient movement. At the same time, another evolutionary force was pushing in the opposite direction. Bigger brains made our ancestors smarter, better at making tools, cooperating, and adapting to new environments. But bigger brains also meant babies with larger heads. Human evolution had reached a biological compromise. The pelvis couldn't become much wider without making walking and running less efficient. Yet babies couldn't stop evolving larger brains because intelligence had become humanity's greatest survival advantage. Childbirth became the price of both. But science never stands still. Over the last decade, researchers have suggested that the story may be even more complicated. A newer explanation, known as the energetics of gestation and growth hypothesis, proposes that pregnancy doesn't end only because of the size of the birth canal. It may also end because the mother's body reaches its metabolic limit. During the final weeks of pregnancy, a mother's body is working at an extraordinary pace, consuming energy to support both herself and her growing baby. Eventually, that energy demand approaches the maximum the human body can safely sustain. In other words, babies may be born not only because they are running out of room, but because their mothers are running out of energy. Both ideas, the obstetric dilemma and the metabolic hypothesis, are supported by scientific evidence, and many researchers believe they work together rather than competing with each other. This helps explain one of the strangest facts about our species. Compared with almost every other mammal, human newborns are astonishingly helpless. A foal can stand within an hour. A baby giraffe can run on its very first day. Even young chimpanzees cling to their mothers and develop physical independence far more quickly than human infants. A human baby, however, cannot walk, feed itself, or even hold up its own head. At first glance, that seems like a weakness, but evolution turned it into one of our greatest strengths. At birth, the human brain is only about 25% of its adult size. Instead of completing most of its development inside the womb, the brain continues growing rapidly after birth. During the first few years of life, billions of new neural connections form, allowing children to learn language, recognize faces, solve problems, and absorb culture in ways unmatched by any other animal. It's an extraordinary trade-off. Being born earlier makes childbirth safer than waiting for the brain to grow larger inside the womb. The cost is years of complete dependence on adults. But there was still one final challenge. Even if the baby was small enough to fit through the birth canal, the journey out of the mother's body was unlike anything seen in almost any other primate. The baby couldn't simply move straight through. Instead, it had to twist, turn, and rotate with incredible precision inside the narrow birth canal. Those complex movements would make human childbirth one of the most mechanically difficult events in the animal kingdom. And they may have sparked something even more remarkable than intelligence itself. The moment humans began helping each other bring new life into the world.